Nobody saw it coming. Not from the outside. There were no crashes, no technical blunders, no pit lane chaos. Just a moment. A document. Buried inside 42 pages of dense internal notes, the kind not meant to leave the four walls of a race team's HQ. Somehow it landed right in Lewis Hamilton's hands. No one screamed. No confrontation followed, just stillness. A cold, unsettling silence from the Ferrari camp. And in that silence, Hamilton found his answer. It wasn't confusion. It wasn't denial. It was quiet agreement, a wordless confession. What he had stumbled upon wasn't just a report or a list of updates. It was a signal. This wasn't about competition anymore. It was about influence, about reshaping what he thought was a partnership. Slowly, carefully, with no headlines or drama, a plan was in motion, one that could wipe out the very legacy Ferrari had once claimed they'd protect. When the announcement came that Hamilton had joined Ferrari, the world went wild. 7 world titles to his name. A modern legend joining motorsport's most iconic team. The hype felt historic. The deal was supposed to light up the paddock. Ferrari still chasing its return to dominance, and Hamilton seeking one last title to seal his legacy. The headlines wrote themselves. But while the cameras clicked and the press releases made the rounds, something else was unfolding quietly in the background. Behind those team photos and confident interviews, a different kind of story was being written. One where Hamilton wasn't the centerpiece, but a placeholder. A name with weight, brought in to shift attention, to set the stage. But not to win. On the surface, it looked like any other team setup. 2 drivers, 1 garage, 1 shared goal. But the more Hamilton settled into his new surroundings, the more uneasy he became. He started picking up on little things, decisions that didn't add up. During simulator work, something felt off. Changes he asked for were brushed aside or delayed without proper reasoning. The feedback loop felt broken. While his teammates' side of the garage ran fluid sessions, clean and precise, Hamilton's runs felt like trial and error experiments, random, unstable, sometimes almost impossible to work with. At first, he gave them the benefit of the doubt. New team, new systems. Things take time. But as the days passed, the pattern became hard to ignore. Requests were acknowledged, but not acted on. Setup tweaks were under review, but never implemented. It started after the big move, the one that shocked the F1 world. Hamilton leaving. Mercedes to join Ferrari for the 2025 season was supposed to be a game-changer. Fans cheered. Pundits called it his redemption. Ferrari even said they would treat both drivers equally and tailor the car to suit them both. But when the spotlight dimmed and real work began, everything started shifting. The energy in meetings turned cold. Team briefings were short, sometimes rushed. His ideas were heard but not followed up. During winter testing, Hamilton noticed clear differences. His car felt heavier, less responsive. When he asked why, the answers were vague. Parts still in development, components temporarily unavailable. Yet his teammates seemed to have no such issues, getting upgrades and feedback with no delay. By the time simulation sessions became routine, Hamilton wasn't guessing anymore. He had seen too much over his long career to ignore the signs. What he was facing wasn't bad luck. It was controlled, organized, precise. Not loud sabotage, but something even more effective. Quiet resistance. By the time preseason testing kicked off, Hamilton had moved past suspicion. Now he was sure. He paid closer attention to how the team operated around him, and the signs only grew clearer. During simulator runs, he kept encountering restrictions. When he asked for specific setup combinations, especially ones that suited his driving preferences, the team either delayed them or said it wasn't possible at that time. It didn't sit right with him. He had been part of top-tier setups before. He knew how things should run. But at Ferrari, the pieces just weren't fitting. Some sessions would end early without explanation. Sometimes, when he wanted to compare current data with previous runs, access was limited, or the files were simply missing due to supposed system updates. The reasons sounded technical and harmless on the surface, but when stacked together, it formed a picture of isolation, one that kept him from getting the full view. Race testing brought even more red flags. Everything appeared even on paper, same tire loads, fuel amounts, and car specifications. But as Hamilton drove, the feel wasn't right. The car felt heavier in corners, slow in acceleration, less predictable under braking. When he flagged, the engineers told him everything was identical. He didn't argue, but inside, he knew something was being hidden. Then came a moment that confirmed his doubts. After a set of quick laps that surprised even him, he returned to the garage to review telemetry. It was gone, not flagged or under analysis, just gone. When he asked, the response was the usual, "We're checking it," or "It'll be restored later." But that later never arrived. That's when he understood. This wasn't about small mistakes. This was a plan. What made it effective wasn't any dramatic failure or clear sabotage. It was silence. Thoughtfully placed silence. The kind that keeps you off balance without ever raising alarm bells. A slow, steady erosion of confidence, support, and opportunity. And in Formula One, that's more dangerous than any crash. In most teams, if they want to sideline a driver, they might hide it behind technical issues or label it as bad luck. But what Hamilton faced wasn't that obvious. Ferrari didn't need to sabotage his car or make public mistakes. They had something far more subtle and effective, carefully chosen silence and behind-the-scenes choices. There were no loud disagreements, no visible bias. Instead, the team's actions came across as procedural, almost professional, but underneath, they all pointed in the same direction. Every meeting, every test, every delay started to form a pattern, a structure. Hamilton wasn't just imagining things. He was seeing how the team moved, and that movement didn't center around him. It was built around someone else. Inside the Ferrari system, there were people who had long-standing connections, shared history, and a common goal. They weren't just co-workers, they were a unit. A close circle around Charles Leclerc, built from the early days, strengthened over time. These engineers and strategists had worked with Leclerc during his rise. They trusted him. They communicated in a kind of shorthand that came from familiarity, and that familiarity shaped how decisions were made. When Leclerc gave feedback, changes followed fast. Adjustments to the car, tweaks in strategy, it all happened almost immediately. On Hamilton's side, things moved slower, less direct, more cautious. Even within his own garage, Hamilton noticed the difference. The people assigned to him kept changing. Roles shifted, engineers rotated. It didn't feel permanent, it didn't feel like his team. They were capable, no doubt, but they lacked the chemistry, the connection, and in a sport where split seconds can define a weekend, that kind of cohesion matters more than most fans ever realize. So during technical discussions and race planning, Hamilton watched how things unfolded. When he spoke, his words were noted, but rarely acted upon. When Leclerc gave input, things shifted quickly, not because of speed or skill, but because of structure. Ferrari had a direction, and Hamilton was starting to understand that it didn't include him at the center. So what do you do when you're Lewis Hamilton, one of the greatest drivers in Formula One history, and suddenly find yourself on the outside of your own team? You don't throw tantrums. You don't point fingers in front of the cameras. You do what Hamilton did. You focus. You adjust. You push harder than ever before. Race by race, he started making noise in the only way that mattered, on track. Even with the limitations, the small delays, the missing data, he found speed. He found rhythm. Every lap became a message. Every qualifying session became a reminder. You can't silence performance. While others played politics, he stuck to racing. But even as he fought back on the circuit, He couldn't ignore what was happening off it. Media coverage slowly began to shift. The same Italian outlets that once celebrated his arrival started focusing elsewhere. Leclerc was praised as the future, the one to bring Ferrari back to glory. And Hamilton? He was described as experienced, wise, a mentor figure. Subtle, but clear. The message was that he wasn't the star anymore. He was the support. It wasn't about pace, not entirely. It was about perception, image, control. Ferrari was shaping a storyline, and in that script, Hamilton's role had been quietly rewritten. He wasn't the main character, he was the symbol, useful for headlines, valuable for PR, but not the one meant to carry the team's hopes. And still, he didn't stop. Every time he sat in that SF-25, he carried more than just a helmet and gloves. He carried the weight of reputation, legacy, expectation. He didn't ask for sympathy. He asked for fairness. And when it didn't come, he kept driving anyway. Lap after lap, through setups not built for him, through data he never received, through strategies that always seemed to favor the other side of the garage. What Hamilton faced wasn't sabotage in the classic sense. It was a quiet resistance. A system built to outlast complaints. He wasn't being destroyed. He was being contained. Softly, quietly, professionally. But if there's one thing the world should know by now, it's that Lewis Hamilton doesn't give up.